It saw me. So hi, everyone. My name is Bill Telepan. I'm here at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. In the background, you see Central Park, where I'm the culinary director. I'm also the executive chef of Wellness in the Schools, a nonprofit that brings cooks into the cafeteria to cook alongside the cafeteria cooks to bring less processed food, scratch cooking. And those cooks also go into the classroom to do cooking lessons for the kids. A lot of the stuff is the stuff we're cooking in the cafeteria. We also have a Coach for Kids program where we bring coaches into the recess yard to get the active recess going, prevent bullying, and get these kids running around during lunch. So this way you have a healthy lunch, active recess. They're ready for the second half of the day. And then this all fights obesity and keeps kids thinking about being healthy going forward for the rest of their lives. I'm here for the Pandemic Pages Chronicles of this, the last of the series of WITS Talks. I'm here with three fabulous people who are producing or creating cookbooks during the pandemic. Our first panelist is Gregory Gourdet, who's a chef and cookbook author who previously appeared on Top Chef's Bravo's Top Chef, and Top Chef All-Stars. Gregory brings his Haitian heritage to cooking at his restaurant, Conwinter Village in Portland, Oregon. Sorry, I'm reading from a script here, guys. A dining experience that celebrates the cuisine of Haiti and is inspired by Black, Indigenous, and people of color cuisines from all over the world. Gregory's cookbook, Everyone's Table, Global Recipes for Modern Health, which features 200 mouth-watering recipes, will be coming out on May 11th, 2000. That happened already. It came out. That's some bad producing there, Alex. Congratulations, Gregory. All right. Just scripts. We also have Karen Rinaldi. This is a great one. She's a professional preacher of the gospel of suckitude. All right. I like that. All right. Before she found surfing, she sucked at plenty of things, among them skiing, I suck, horseback riding, which almost ended tragically for her, boxing, she doesn't want to talk about it, but we may have some time to ask about that, running, rollerblading, cycling, which she boasts she's the least suckiest at, right? Along with her side hustle of suckitude, Rinaldi has spent 20 years in publishing and is a publisher of Harper Wave, an imprint she founded in 2012. Her first novel, The End of Men, was the basis of the 2016 feature film, Maggie's Plan, directed by Rebecca Miller and starring one of my favorites, Julianne Moore, Greta Gerwig, and Ethan Hawke. Her book, It's Great to Suck at Something, and I agree, the unexpected joy of wiping out and what it can teach us about patience, resilience, and the stuff that really matters. That's brilliant. Is a nonfiction deep dive into the joys of what's that sucking can bring. Sorry. I love this. You also have essays that appeared in the New York Times, Time, Motto, Lit Hub, and Oprah.com, among others. And we also have Caroline Schiff, who is dealing with Mr. Pete Wells downstairs in the dining room of her restaurant, Gage and Tollner. She's widely known under the moniker Pastry Chef. I love, this is fun. Who is, as I said, she's a pastry chef at Gage and Tollner. She is also the head chef behind the fresh snack bar company, Slow Up, which is featured in Fresh Catskills, right? I've seen that being sold through freshcatskills.com. Yeah. She is also a celebrated culinary consultant based in Brooklyn, the BK. She got her start in the restaurant industry over a decade ago at Good Fork, worked her way up through another number of acclaimed restaurants and bakeries, including Ma La Griade, Galen Zamara, a friend of mine, I love him, Maysville, New York City, Keaton Nola, Green Gate Great Provisions. Nancy, you better mute yourself, please. This is the wackiest of all WITS talks, people. I'm just letting you know, okay? Thank you. This is what happens when chefs get involved with this stuff. It just goes off the handle, just like what's happening. Caroline's looking at her phone going, yes, he ordered the tarte flambé. Anyway, Caroline's signature gravity-defying hairdo is outside only by her enormous heart. Thank you for showing the hair. In her spare time, you can find her either supporting charitable causes or running a marathon, which I think we're going to get her to run the marathon for WITS this year. Correct? We're gonna hook you up, right? Look out
I
for her.
could be tucked into that.
All right. Well, look for her debut cookbook, The Sweet Side of Sourdough, which we'll talk about later, coming out this fall by Page Street Publishing. Welcome, everybody. You guys are awesome. So I'm going to get started into the questions, and I'm going to go to Karen first. Karen, so what has it been like publishing cookbooks in the time of the pandemic here? It's got to be very different. You're not able to be cooking with a lot of people. I know when I did my cookbook back in 2004, I had a whole restaurant of people working on stuff. I was working with several people testing recipes. What has it been like for getting this going?
I had the great fortune of working with Gregory on the cookbook during the pandemic. So, and I hope I don't, one thing I hope I don't suck at is being an editor and a publisher. So Gregory, you can speak to that later. You know, the thing about cookbooks that's interesting is that they are one of the few books in the kind of spectrum of books that we publish that are part of the reason we love them so much is they are physical, right? You know, that's why we buy them still. That's why we publish them still, is that people want the physical object. A lot of other books, you know, the digital formats kind of, you know, they're all formats for reading and participating, but cookbooks, right, the reason for being is that they're beautiful, they're tangible, they're visceral, they're interactive in that kind of very physical way. So to be able to have to build a book without sitting there and going, literally you would get these, you know, big sheets of paper. They're just the, you know, the called first pass pages or second pass pages where everything is lined up. And usually you just go for hours and hours and you look through them. Often if the chef is with, you know, in close proximity, if you can get together, right, and do it in person, and you're really reviewing it in real time, every single page. And Gregory and I couldn't do that. So instead we had to work, you know, on a PDF. And, you know, we're doing everything digitally and everybody got up to speed very, very quickly. But it was, and I don't know, Gregory, if you agree with that or not, but I felt like it was hard because what you couldn't see is like you could scroll, but you couldn't see the book as it was going to be laid out in that physical format. Right. There was and you know, but we all, like I said, we all adjusted and we did I think a great job because the book is absolutely beautiful, if I must say so myself. That's mostly Gregory's work and our sort of work in the background. But so the biggest thing I missed was the kind of physical access to because I'm thinking like a book person, like a publisher. I want to see things on the page. I want to see what the color looks like, you know, the color separations look like and how it flows. And we didn't have that luxury. So we had to adjust. But that said, we were dreading it, thinking this is not going to be possible. How the hell are we going to make a cookbook during, you know, without having hard copy, without, Gregory, I think even sending you hard copy became a problem, right? Because we had to find a place to print it, but then that was difficult. And then sending it, I think one got lost, and it was just one of these things where everything was kind of an obstacle. And yet what's kind of amazing is that at the end of the day, it's a beautiful cookbook. It really did. So you have this digital process for a very physical end product, meaning the book. And so I can't say that it was terrible. And then the good news is that cookbooks, when the digital platforms, I think this is worth noting, but when digital platforms started to rise, everybody thought it was the end of the cookbook. I don't know, Bill, if you remember those conversations. Yeah. People are going to be doing, everything's online, you know, recipes are online, you know, there's not a really good interface digitally, you know, for cookbooks. Cookbooks are going to be dead. And they never died, right? They just kept going. We were like, oh my God, this is really interesting. The cookbook market stays. And then in fact, because of its physicality, right, I think people really want it. I mean, you know I have a cookbook library. When I'm thinking of what to cook, I kind of the mood that you're in and the chef you want to follow and you know, the cuisine you want to eat, and then you read them and stuff. So what's happened is that then during COVID, during the quarantine, people were home cooking a lot. Right. So cookbook sales actually rose against all kind of odds. So there's always been this, our cookbook's going to survive. And it's like, not only has they survived and thrived during quarantine, the production end of it became something else, but the sales of them spiked because everybody's cooking for themselves. And that's been a beautiful thing. And I'm hoping what it means is that people will continue to enjoy that, and then will be kind of, buying cookbooks just from a market point of view, but also from a publisher point of view. There's nothing more exciting than getting the finished cookbook. I mean, it's nervous. I was, frankly, when yours came, I was nervous as hell because I thought this is the first time I've done this, virtually. And I thought, what is it going to be? What am I going to see? Because usually you've seen all the pages many times over. And then I kind of like opened it up and paged through every page, and I was thrilled, and it looks great.
Well, I can only imagine because, like I, to this day, still get the New York Times delivered. And I think what you do is, because when I look at it, try to look at it digitally, it's kind of like you miss things, you know what I mean? Like you're saying, like when you're probably looking over the cookbook, you have to look at it really, like with a sharp eye to make sure that everything's right and looks good and stuff like that. So, I mean, I can't imagine like having that, like even like when I'm reading, if I read the newspaper digitally, you're going to miss something. You're going to miss an article you may want to see. So that must have made it like even more harder. I mean, and I don't focus that well unless you have this big thing in front of you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm old school too because I still edit. I edit on hard copy, but I wasn't able to edit Gregory's book on hard copy, which made me crazy. But you adjusted, but it, I still tend to print things out, write on them, and then transfer them digitally. I mean, and that's also a function of my age. I'm a little old, so I'm not as fluent in it. But it again, what was great is that it all worked out, but it was very nerve-wracking. It was more nerve-wracking than you. And cookbooks are, as you know, Bill, they're in Carol, all of you, and Caroline, they're productions. There are so many. There's the photographer and the designer and the copy editor and the recipe developer and the writer and the author and the chef, and there's so many pieces. So it's like it's operatic, right? So it's not just like you publish a book. It's like somebody writes a book and then you edit it and then you make it into a book form. When it's a cookbook, there are so many factors all feeding into it. So it's a very big production, and doing that at a remove. And Gregory will talk about where he was when he was doing the book. That made it even more interesting.
Well, I guess was it also like, I mean, were you guys producing this cookbook before the pandemic happened?
Yeah, we started it before. So
that must have been, and then you had to make, like, you're going into this thinking like, oh, we're gonna have to see all the pages. Gregory's gonna be cooking with everyone, and you're all gonna maybe come over to your house and do some dishes and cook with the photographer and all that stuff, and be really there with the photographer. I mean, then it was just like, oh no, we can't see each other anymore.
Yeah.
And Gregory, you're based in Portland, correct?
I am. Portland, Oregon.
Karen, you're in New York, right?
I'm in New York, right?
Yeah. So, Gregory, tell us a little, because like Gregory, like having to test the recipes, photograph the recipes, talk to recipes. I'm sure you had a recipe tester. Yeah. You maybe sent recipes to friends and family to try out, things like that. I mean, and you didn't get to really hang out with anyone.
I think for me, what's interesting is it was my first cookbook, so I really had nothing to go off of. There are definitely some times, obviously, I've been a part of, watching my other friends write cookbooks and, watching them get their, beautiful glossy pass and, the physicality of it. And it's like, that one step where like, oh, the book is actually coming together. But for me, it being my first book, I really had nothing else to gauge it off. I had talked to a lot of people who had published books prior, and, a lot of people told me how much work it was. So I think that scope and the timeline, I really understood it. We had a deadline, and I felt it was reasonable. Overall, the project took 3 years, and people had told me that books take that long. Like prior to that, it's hard to believe that it takes so long to, write a book, but it does, So I think I had all this in my head, and I actually went through quite a bit while writing the book, because I was actually working at a restaurant that I had been at for 10 years when I started writing the book. So I would test things at the restaurant. I would order produce through the restaurant.
Right.
I would give my photographer. And then I left that position. So I transitioned to a friend's house who had a really big, beautiful kitchen. And I started working at their house, and, they have a family, so I could give them all the leftovers.
Right.
And all that stuff. And then the pandemic hit, and even though like they were in my bubble, like in the early days, like everyone was just locked down at home. So I moved the whole production of everything to my little apartment, and it's like it's a 2 little bedroom bachelor pad with a very small kitchen. It's really functional, but you know, I literally had pots and pans like all over my living room. You know, like the second bathroom was just like literally like jars and jars of coconut milk and palm sugar and like all the extra ingredients. And I was desperate to find people to like, you know, donate all the food to. You know, luckily my photographer, you know, and her assistant, you know, we all kept working throughout the pandemic. We just made it happen. You know, we did not stop. So that was really cool. We were very determined to get the project done. But yeah, I mean, like for me, I think, you know, there was definitely some fear and some hesitation about, you know, hey, like, you know, like, is it the right paper? You know, this is my first time picking paper. I'm never going to be able to actually feel the paper. Is it the right gloss? You know, like they're saying all these terms. Like, I don't understand what any of these terms mean, you know.
Like, yeah, well, yeah, good.
So it was like a lot, but, you know, I just kind of broke it down into pieces and I trusted the process. And like, I would see the images, and Eva, she did a fantastic job with photography. So I knew the images were great. You know, JJ, my writer, he's fantastic. And, you know, we went step by step, and I saw all the pieces just really coming together. So I trusted the pieces. And when the PDF started coming in, you know, it was hard. Like, I'm a little bit older too, and I'm definitely someone who works like with like large pieces of paper. So to have to kind of go through things, you know, on a computer was a little bit challenging, but it's a sign of the times, and it was what it was. So, you know, when the book finally actually came, it was a very, very momentous occasion. I remember Karen, you know, emailing us how proud she was, how happy she was. So that was a really good sign for us. And I think it's a beautiful book, and people tell me it's a beautiful book. So I know that we're really hard on it. So I definitely think it's something that's a pretty big timestamp. You know, the past 3 years have been, a lot of things have happened, and I'm happy to have some healthy recipes out there for people who are kind of past pandemic cooking and want to eat a little bit healthier after a year of comfort food.
True, and I think what's great about having you cook all your stuff in your little tiny apartment is that those recipes are probably going to be more accurate. If you continued at your restaurant.
No, it's so true. Like, honestly, like the first recipes that I tested at the restaurant, they were all so wrong. You know, those went out to the recipe testers first, and they were like, this weigh's way too much sauce. Like, this is like way too salty. And like, I'm just like thinking in restaurant quantities, you know, and then.
Why is it taking 45 minutes longer, you know?
All the recipes tested at home was like, all right, I'm like actually shopping at the grocery store for these ingredients. I'm actually working out of my real kitchen.
Right. Yeah, no, it's totally going to be, that's one thing that I tried to do is like, I had my recipe tester do it at her house. I bought a stove, a regular like electric stove to put in the basement of the restaurant I was working at, to test recipes on a shitty stove, you know, that was like, I knew was going to be terrible. So, you know, so, and well, that's great that actually, it kind of all worked out in a way.
You know, it always does. So.
Yeah,
So, Caroline, you listening to this because you're at a restaurant, you're putting a cookbook together, and you know what was great about Caroline is that she sort of got the book because of what she was posting on Instagram. It was great because I know like one of the things that was a great sensation. I don't know if you saw a recent Instagram that I did. We did your scallion pancake, sourdough discard scallion pancake here at the museum one day. But that went like viral like crazy, huh?
That's amazing. Yeah, it did. It was like one of these early pandemic just things that took off. And then it just all kind of spiraled from there. And the book came out of that really. And you know, we were supposed to open this restaurant initially March 2020. So we had opened for like a couple of days of soft opening and then, you know, had to shut down. Prior to that, my agent and I had been pitching some cookbooks and like there was no publisher that was giving me the time of day. Nothing was selling. And so I just kind of was like, I'm putting this on hold. I'm going to open the restaurant. I will revisit cookbooks in like a year or two. Like I just it's fine. And, you know, COVID happened and all of a sudden I'm at home. And so I'm just like home cooking, home baking and posting stuff. And then a publisher reached out to me on Instagram, and at first I was like, is this real? Like, is this a scam? Like, so I like Googled them and I was like, oh no, they're a real publisher. They're distributed by Macmillan. This is great. So then, you know, I brought my agent in and the idea, I mean, it really is like, it's totally a product of the pandemic, from like the idea of it to actually being able to work on it. I would have never been able to do it had I been, you know, 50 hours a week at the restaurant.
Right. So, and then I want to know, like, how old is your sourdough starter that you have?
The one I have is, I mean, she is, I think.
It's a she.
Yeah. So I think she's like 5 years old, maybe.
Awesome.
And that was the thing, like so she came from, she was brought over to the restaurant by somebody else who had it somewhere else. So it's kind of one of those things. And then once we shut down, I was like, well, we can't, I'm going to take some home.
You got to feed the baby, right? You got to feed the baby.
You got to feed the baby. And now, you know, she's got children all over Brooklyn.
So good.
Well, I created one 25 years ago, so it's older than my daughter.
Wow.
And I have it over several places, right? So, and I have a jar in my refrigerator that I keep going back. And I was so happy to have it during the pandemic. And I reached out to Caroline she posted this amazing picture of these sourdough pancakes. And I reached out to her and she let me test them for her. And I think I told you they came out perfect. So.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, those are in the book. But yeah, so it's really.
So how are you juggling now? Now you went from like opening a restaurant to closing a restaurant to sort of like just sort of biding time and doing this. And now you open the restaurant, Pete Wells is downstairs, and you have a book you have to produce.
Yeah, well,
What's going on?
You know, yeah, I got a lot of free time. No, I'm lucky. We really, really hustled with the book, and I just kind of was like, we got to get it all done. So I wrote everything and like tested everything in probably, when did I start it? I think I started it in like October, and I finished writing it in I finished writing it in January, and then January, February, and March we tested everything. So I tested it, and then I hired 2 other recipe testers, and then we did the photo shoot like throughout April pretty much, and I didn't sleep a lot in April. And you know, now it's off. It's like with the copy editor, it's like done.
Oh wow, that's amazing. That's quick. I guess you had the time, right? I mean, you were baking from home, right? Which is kind of great because, like we talked with Gregory, being able to cook these recipes at home is important.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like I really didn't want to test them at work because the oven I have at work is like the nicest oven I'll ever get to use. And nobody else has that oven. So like, if it works in my, you know, whatever oven from 1970, then like, we're good.
You might have to put some asterisks in there saying, this was done from 1970. So it may go a little quicker or a little slower. So for sure. So
yeah. It's always a range.
Well, that's crazy. I mean, and it's crazy being this. Well, that's good that it's all sort of gotten done now, because now you have a little more time to sort of go back, have the back and forth and all that with the book, and see. You're going to start seeing these pages. Are you seeing them digitally also, or are you actually seeing the physical pages that Karen and Gregory longed for?
Up until now, everything I've seen is digital, but I will get like physical, you know, pass at some point, which is just going to be like the coolest thing ever. I can't wait.
It's a great feeling. It's a good feeling. So I mean, and kudos for banging it out that quick. My goodness, you're gonna write my next cookbook, okay?
Sure. I like the thing about it, and like I don't know, Gregory, maybe you feel the same, like, because we work in kitchens, like I work really well under pressure. Like, give me a deadline and I'm good. If I have like 2 years to do something, I won't, it like, you know, I'm
Start
always
2 weeks
ready.
before the 2 years is over, right?
Yeah, like I was always the person who wrote the essay the night before it was due. So like when they were like, you kind of have 6 months to do this if this is the pub date that you want. And I was like, great, let's go.
Right. Now, and Gregory, you were busy too. I mean, were so you were at the restaurant and you left there, but then you opened the Cannes Winter Village, right? And
Yeah.
the Top Chef stuff too. Tell us a little bit about all that stuff, because you've been super busy, man.
You know, I had this like amazing 2020 plan, like many of us did. But, you know, I quit my job. I'd been there for 10 years, you know, at like my old post. I was going to open my own restaurant in a year. I was going to travel the world and research. I was going to go to Haiti and go to Thailand and, you know, go down south and, you know, study American barbecue and finish my book. But, you know, all those plans, you know, really got, you know, sidelined hardcore. And it really just gave me the opportunity to focus more on the book. And honestly, it really expanded the book in a lot of different ways. The book is 200 recipes. It's actually 200 plus.
It's a lot of recipes, yeah.
A lot of recipes. It's almost 400 pages long. So I think having had that extra time to focus on things, we were able to break up the book into different chapters, and we're able to incorporate as much as we did because we did have a little bit extra time. I think the way I think, you know, as a chef and what a dish needs in terms of like the vegetable or the sauce or the pickle or whatever, you know, that makes a really long recipe. So we're able to break those up and create more chapters. So that's why there's like a really big sauce chapter in my book, a really big pickles chapter, all great projects for people at home. So yeah, so I had more free time. But by the time I started filming Top Chef, because that was kind of a last minute ask as well, you know, I was definitely trying to do a few things at once, but, you know, I definitely think the pandemic allowed some space for me to, you know, really dive into the book a little bit more. And I will say this, testing 200 recipes is not easy at all, you know? So we hired 2 recipe testers, one lived in town, one lived in California.
Right.
And I was trying to hire people who worked in different parts of the country just to see what ingredients they could get. But, you know, we got to, you know, down to the wire. And I literally had to ask like 4 of my friends to like, hey, like I'm desperate. Like I need you to test these 7 recipes. I need you to test these 4 recipes, and I need you to test these 6 recipes, and let me know. So we really wanted the recipes to work. So it was really important that they got tested and proper. And you know, I'm definitely not the person to. My writer kept telling me, "You're not the person to test these recipes," and I was like, "What? What do you mean? Like I'm just testing the recipes, but like." If you know how to make it, there's like no way.
Karen's shaking her head.
Testing your own recipes.
Do you get to test some, Karen?
I do. I kind of pulled them. I pull them out as I'm editing them, and I just make them. But I mean, I won't. It would be a lie to say that I'm testing them. I just can't wait for the cookbook, so I just pull them and make them anyway. I mean, that's really what you do. You kind of go, "Ooh, I'll take. You know, I'll copy that page, and I'll, you know, just do it from the page." So yeah, but I don't know. I don't really test it formally though.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Caroline, how's Mr. Wells doing real quick? Let's do a check-in real quick.
I was just getting the check-in. They're still on appetizers.
Okay, good. All right. So, all right, let me ask you the next question to the 2 chefs. And Karen, you could also help with this. Photography is the second most important part, I think, of a book, right? And so, like, I did photography outdoors, and then I went into a studio and did it with the photographer in the studio. How is that for you guys? I mean, were you guys with the photographer? Carolyn, you might have been a little later because the pandemic might have been mellowing it out a little bit. Gregory, you were like in the thick of it at that time. How did that go for you guys?
I mean, I was really safe throughout the pandemic. My photographer, I think we just trusted each other. You know, we never questioned finishing the project. So, you know, I went from having multiple people assisting me on the shoots to having 2 people that I rotated assisting me on the shoot. So we were able to keep that in a very small circle.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we just kept going. My photographer only shot in natural light, so we had a very limited time frame during the day where there was enough natural light to shoot. So yeah, but we just kept plugging away. We knew it had to get done. There's almost over 180 images. It took about, I would say, about an hour to shoot each recipe. So
Yeah.
yeah, so it was a lot of work, and we understood that it had to get done, and we did not let the pandemic get in our way. So that was really important, and I think the effort was worth it.
And what about for you, Caroline? The photography, Caroline.
Sorry. Hi, I'm here. There's a lot
No,
of
you're
people in the
not. No,
space.
you're not. You're not here. We know. It's okay. It's fine.
No. I was very lucky that the publisher did have like an okay budget for photography, which is not always the case. And I have a very good friend who's an amazing food photographer, and it's actually a husband and wife team. So I was able to work with them in a studio that's like part of their house. And it was that to me was like actually the most like fun, rewarding part of this whole process, was like getting to see it all come to life and like build, and like I did the styling as well, which was I love doing. And by the time we started to shoot it, most of us were vaccinated, so it was like,
Right.
it was very optimistic, and yeah, it was great.
So, Karen, for you, what I want to ask you is, do you think the pandemic cooking is going to change the landscape of it? Do you think people are now, they've been cooking, right? And now people know how to cook, right? More so than ever. Are you seeing a lot of stuff happening out there going forward?
What I think what I was saying before too is that I hope that, people who may have been reluctant to cook and reluctant to bake. I mean, sourdough was like the hit of the pandemic. Everybody had a starter, and but it's like, I mean, we were doing it, at our house with the kids, and it was a disaster, but we figured it out after a while. But it's one of those things. All of a sudden, you're just trying things that that you wouldn't have had the time or the space to try, and because you couldn't go to restaurants because you couldn't really order in. So I think where restaurants got really hurt, the cookbook business definitely, I mean, it didn't make up for it, but it definitely prospered from it. And I do think, and there's no way to know, because one thing I know from 35 years of publishing is that we can't really predict, we can predict the trend after it happens, which is not very predictable, right? It's not very valuable. But I do think that people have like learned to cook, and then they also know that like in cooking at home, it's healthy. I do think that a trend in cookbook, there's comfort food, what Gregory was saying, there's definitely that. There were baking books and bread books that sold really well during it. But I do think that cookbooks as a trend, as an overall trend, definitely towards the healthy. It's like where health books, there aren't so many diet books anymore. Remember back in the day, there were all these people aren't really thinking, oh, I'm going to go buy that new diet book. They kind of think, oh, I'm going to learn to eat differently, or in a way that is nourishing my body. And frankly, if you eat well, if you eat healthily,
Right.
you'll get to your good weight. And so I love that Gregory's book does this, which is it's super high end on the chef, chefs as a chef's cookbook, but it also has healthy recipes in mind. So it's not just like healthy food. What used to be healthy food was like, what? Like, you know what I mean? You just like, it was,
Yes.
Nobody wants to eat that stuff. It's the opposite now. It's healthy food actually is now more sophisticated than it's ever been. It's getting more sophisticated with people like Gregory getting into that space. And I think people, as they become more aware, instead of buying diet books, are buying healthy cookbooks and doing it that way. So there's more agency for the user. There's more knowledge around we still have a long way to go. I actually think we do have a long way to go, but it's happening. I mean, look at the work that you're doing. I mean, just the fact of the work that you're doing, the fact that we have, everyone's table out in the marketplace and it's doing really well and people are loving it. It's definitely a new trend. And even sourdough, if you're talking about sourdough, it's like where people kind of get really, you know, down on, I mean, everybody ate plenty of cookies and bread and everything else during the pandemic. But if you're going to say, if I'm going to make a healthy choice and eat this stuff, sourdough is a really good way in. So I even think that people look at sourdough as a healthy alternative to that kind of, you know, to baking and bread and cooking. And I think that's the popularity of it. Can't imagine we're going to go backwards. Like, what is it, Sleeper, Woody Allen, when you go into the, all of a sudden, and I mean, maybe I shouldn't say that out loud, but I think that once you know this and you see that it's available, that healthy cooking is available and delicious, it's only going to keep going in that direction.
Right. So we're going to start getting some questions from the people. I just want to say one thing, Gregory, the timing of your book is perfect because everyone gained a lot of weight from, looking at Caroline's post and baking that way. So when everybody gets nice and slim, Caroline, your book's going to come out at the perfect time because everyone's going to feel like, oh, I can eat that cookie right now. And
mine's coming out like right around Thanksgiving, which is exactly what I wanted.
God.
It's like, it's so perfect.
I'm going to be fit and ready to go. So, so Gregory, now that your book is out, what's going on with it? Where can we buy it? Tell us about like all that stuff. Are you going to be on? Are you going to go around eventually to sign some books and meet some people and cook?
Yeah. I mean, I think as we come out of the pandemic, more people are vaccinated. A lot of things have been virtual thus far, but I am doing a dinner in Denver at Frasca on June 17th and 18th. There's still tickets to the June 18th dinner, and I do have some plans for some signings and some more dinners. But yeah. For the course of the rest of the year, pretty much anything I do will be linked to the book, and I'd love to, actually cook from the book and, actually make my versions for some guests. So yeah, the book has an Instagram account. It's called Everyone's Table Cookbook. So, anyone can follow there for any information about events upcoming referencing the book.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to be opening the members restaurant here in August, September. So I'm going to have a space to host some of these things. So maybe we should talk about the fall or something like that. It would be kind of great to totally cook together and have some fun and with that. So, and Caroline, what about you? You're done with your book. What's happening? Where is he now on his meal, Mr. Wells?
Entrees are fired, so we're good.
This is working perfectly, all right?
I know. Yeah.
How's the restaurant going? Like, has it been busy? What have you been seeing? Are people excited that you guys are finally open?
Yeah. It's been great. And like, I think I didn't even realize like how much I just like as a chef needed to be in this space. Like it's been awesome. It's busy. People are in a great mood. People are ordering a ton. I've been cooking in restaurants and bakeries and everything. I mean, I've been doing this for like 15 years now. And like, I've never sold so much dessert. It's like 75% of the diners order dessert, which is wild.
That's great.
I don't know if it's like, they're just excited that they're out to dinner or what, and we're a new restaurant, but it's great. People are eating a lot in Brooklyn.
I always order dessert, no matter what. So
yeah.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to throw this one last question out to all three of you. What advice would you give a chef who is writing his first cookbook, and what do you wish you would have known sooner? Karen, what advice would you give a chef from a publisher perspective?
I would say
do it. No, just kidding. Do it. Now is the time to do it, I guess, right?
Do it with, make sure you've got the big picture, and your first cookbook is a big idea and it's held together, because you don't want to do it before you're ready to do it. I would say just, pause, because people get pressure to do cookbooks and stuff. And it's interesting. Some people do it, want to do it too soon. And some people are really resistant. And, we kind of know as publishers when the right time is, and you know, frankly, you're getting advised by your agents and the marketplace. If it's kind of the market's
Right.
coming up for you, which what it did with Caroline, and your agent is going to know. But I would say wait until you have that that cookbook, is the first one. You want it to be a killer cookbook. You really do. And you want to, it's worth waiting for that idea and for the time. And, you know, it takes so much effort and time. I mean, most people, you know, I've talked to chefs who said, I will never do another cookbook again after the first one. They're like, it's just too much work. Of course, it's like having a baby and like 2 years later, they're back.
I'm already ready.
I always say that about opening restaurants. Like I've done so many openings and every time I'm like, never doing it again. And then a year later, I'm like, this is a great idea. Let's go.
Yeah, it's true.
No.
Very good. Yeah, it's funny you should say that, Karen, because I, when I took over Judson Grill, like within a year, I mean, we had a really good start there. Somebody came up to me and approached me and said, do you want to do a cookbook? I'm like, are you crazy? No, I'm not ready. And then a year or two later, but then it made me start to think about it, right? Like, oh, maybe I should think about doing a cookbook, and what would it become? And then it took me about like 2 years just over time, not really thinking about it. And then finally, when I was approached again, they said, well, are you ready now? And I said, I think I am. And I just started talking out the thought process of it. And it really, like you said, it was a big idea. And I think it really explained who I was and what I was doing. So now, like if I wanted to do something a little more casual or a little more fun or something for wellness in the schools, it all sort of ties in together. Gregory, what you jumped in, you know, how many times did people come to you and say, hey, when are you going to do a cookbook? When are you going to do a cookbook?
Yeah, definitely over the years, multiple times. And I was definitely not ready. And I really kind of came to the decision on my own. But, you know, for me, you know, like I really wanted a book that helped people. And even if you hadn't seen me on TV or came to my restaurants, it would be a good resource for you. So that was really my intention with the book. But I mean, as far as advice, I would say, you know, do something that's really personal. You know, there's a million kind of restaurant chef cookbooks out there that will be specific to your audience. But if your audience isn't that far reaching, and you know most people's audience is very limited, so do something that expands past your specific audience that is far reaching. And that is why, you know, I wrote, you know, a book focused, you know, for, you know, the home cook, you know, based on superfoods with like global ingredients. And like I feel that's a far reaching concept. It's also very personal. Because that's how I eat every day. So I think kind of like thinking outside the box of, you know, thinking outside of your own personal box and doing something that's really, really personal and far reaching is kind of like the move, because, you know, it's a very crowded space.
I guess it's like thinking about putting a restaurant together, right? Because it has to be what's going to differentiate your restaurant from my restaurant to Caroline's restaurant to Karen's restaurant. And so you should take that approach, I guess, right? Caroline, you went through it and you blew through it. So did you even think about this? Damn, girl.
Now that it's done, I'm like, that was crazy. But when I was doing it, I was just doing it. But like, I actually really loved the process, and if I had had like a year to do it, I think it would have even been like more enjoyable. So like I'm ready to do another one. But in terms of advice, like I would say, and this is you know, Karen and Gregory have already kind of said this, is like write about something that you really, really love, that you're really excited about. Write about the food that you love, that means something to you. And have a very niche specific idea. Like I was pitching cookbooks for so long and they got rejected all the time, and I'm glad they did, because I actually don't think any of them would have really had the traction.
Right.
And then I like found this concept through, you know, getting, you know, laid off at work and losing, you know, all this stuff overnight. And like I have so much to say about that. So just like find the thing that you just like can't shut up about, and that's your book.
So if you were going to do another cookbook, what would be that thing that you wouldn't shut up about next?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked.
Close your eyes, Bill.
This is,
You don't
it's
want
a
to reveal
little,
your secrets. Might not want to reveal your secrets there.
I know it is, it's a little, I'm not going to be specific because I actually think it's a really, I do think this idea has legs, but it's actually a savory book. So and it's not baking, it's not pastry. So, it's just something else that I'm very, very passionate about in food and the kind of food that I do. So, you know, TBD, maybe I'll sell it. We'll see.
Okay, great. And Gregory, what about you? So you didn't get the time to travel and do all those things you wanted to do. What you want to jump in and do another one? What would that be about?
Yeah, I mean, I love the process.
Sweets?
When you do something really hard and you kind of like feel empty because it's over, you know. So
The lard cookbook. No.
But you know, I think one of my favorite parts of the book is how it explores different cultures and kind of these really iconic dishes from all across the world and like their cultural significance and how they came to be. You know, like featuring like jerk and African stews and African sauces and Haitian ingredients and sauces. And so I'd love to do a second book that was still focused on health and a healthful take on these ingredients and these dishes, but kind of explored the cultural significance, continue to explore the cultural significance, because there are plenty of healthful dishes already existing in, you know, societies and countries and, you know, populations all across the world. So just lean into that a little bit more.
Awesome. Well, good luck on that. And Karen, thank you for being on. Caroline, you could now go make some desserts. Gregory, thank you for all being part of Wellness in the Schools, our talks, and look forward to you. We did a lot of tweeting and stuff about this, so hopefully, you know, everyone will connect and everyone will go now get Gregory's book and look forward to Caroline's book. And I see Karen's going to be very busy with Caroline Gregory's book coming up. And we're going to, we will post and share about all your books and that are coming up. Gregory will do yours, Caroline again. And then this is recorded, so it's going to be available on the Wellness in the Schools, I think, website, Alex. Where's the, it's going to be if people want to see it later? IG, Instagram? Okay. Anyway, thank you guys so much. It was great talking to you guys. I can't wait to see you guys all in person here at the Met or out where you are. And I'm going to come to Gage and Tollner soon. And Karen, come by, and Gregory and Caroline. We're going to talk about getting you guys over here cooking. So
I would love that. That would be an honor.
Be safe and be healthy, and good luck to all you guys. Take care. All right.
Thank
Cheers.
you so much.
All right.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Everybody.